well, if your business has been going for any amount of time, then you're 1 in 10, your business is going to die. But if you can make it past the 10-year mark, over 50% of businesses are fine. Like they're established now. They're not going anywhere. And now you've got a business that you can run. So much of business is momentum. It's kind of knowing why you're doing it, what you're doing, and then having the self-belief that you've created enough of a narrative to pull you through the next round of persuasion of this is a thing. This should be a thing. But always believing in the next pivot.
My name is Joe Morrison. Today I'm welcoming Joshua Davidson, the creator and CEO of Night Zookeeper. Thank you, Josh, for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Could you give us a brief introduction to Night Zookeeper for those people who don't know what it is?
Yeah, of course. So Night Zookeeper is an education technology company. We help children fall in love with reading and writing with a bit of an underline on writing. It's really been our focus to use children's creativity and their imagination to motivate them to write their own stories and create their own characters. And then we use that as the hook, if you like, for broadening out all of their language arts skills.
Fabulous. And Josh, for those who don't, I've known Josh for a long time now, since quite the early days, actually, of Night Zookeeper.
Yeah, it must have been pretty early on.
I think
I
it
mean,
would
we've
be.
been I potentially 2014, something like that. I mean,
Oh,
we
yeah,
founded the
exactly.
business in well, 2012 is when we all kind of went full time on it. So we've been going at this 12 years now. But yeah, potentially 2014, we first crossed paths, and I
That's
was
right.
singing from the same hymn sheet at that time.
Absolutely. And the purpose of these conversations is to pass on wisdom to other founders, other business owners, that real kind of lived experience. And I know you've got loads to
Hard-lived,
share.
the hard-lived
Lived,
experience,
yes. Well,
Joe.
it always is, right? Running a
Yes,
business
it
is
is.
difficult, and
Yeah,
this is why
yeah,
I do these conversations for exactly
sure.
that reason.
Yeah.
So just take us back to the start briefly, Josh. Like, what was it that inspired you to create Night Zookeeper?
So, I mean, obviously, with everything in life, there's always a myriad of factors playing on every decision and every path that you can take. I was always an ideas guy. Like I had books full of projects that I wanted to do one day, and the main hurdle, I guess, was salary, living, regular job, etc. But also myself because rather than focus on X idea, I came up with X1 and then Y and then Y4, and it just kept on adding to the ideas book rather than sort of drilling into which idea to do. Um, but I realized that that was what I was doing, and was also I guess I at the same time I was looking around at my friends and thinking could life not be in the rat race? Could we work together? Could me and my friends work together on something? And one of my best friends was a primary school teacher, and one of the ideas that had kind of got a lot further than the other ideas in my notebook was Night Zookeeper, and he was a teaching assistant when I first came up with this idea during a master's in digital art, and he invited me into his school where he was working, and we ran it as a school project where I was essentially like a visiting author coming in, reading my little story about a zoo at nighttime with strange magical animals, and then getting the kids to create their animals to come and live in my zoo. And he loved that experience. I loved that experience, and it felt as we saw the kids running around the playground at lunchtime pretending to be spying giraffes and time traveling elephants, we realized maybe there is something here. And so it was always kind of sitting quite near the top of my list of projects I'd like to do one day. Um, he had been transferred to the Middle East and had some savings from a high-paying teacher's job. I had been given a bonus at work, so it was just kind of things started to maybe coalesce around we could do something, and so this idea which I'd always believed was an important idea from the moment I'd had it, um, just made sense. And I'll just quickly explain why I felt it was an important idea. Um, I studied fine art, first of all, before I did my master's in digital art. So I've always believed in the superpower of creativity. And I felt at the time, proven correct, that digital wasn't doing creativity very well. So you have to sort of cast your mind back a fair amount of time for this. But even the BBC would have a build your own comic interactive game where you could just drag 4 potential characters into the comic scene. And I'd sort of talk about this and how this isn't good. This is a keyboard with preset songs. We need some technology that really is digital Lego. It is something that lets kids fully express and be creative. Now, I was right, because we now have Minecraft and we now have Roblox, both of which tap into that creative urge of children in a digital way, and much more financially successful than I was ever able to wrap a business around. But I was certainly onto something with that mission. But I guess my personal mission was always a bit more attached to traditional forms of creativity. So I was interested in drawing and writing stories, and I wanted to, I guess, use technology to add value to that form of creative play. Um, yeah, so I warned you, Joe. I will ramble on, and I have done such a thing on the first hurdle. But hopefully that sort of gives an idea of where Night Zookeeper came from. There's never a straightforward answer, and I'm sure the people listening to this, if they do have ideas, competing ideas in their head, or things that they would like to maybe do one day, it won't be one thing that pushes them to do it. It'll always be weighing up a myriad of factors, and eventually the scales will tip, and it'll be okay. This is the idea. This is the time. This is why. This is now. And that's how I found myself at the beginning of this crazy journey.
I think what's quite striking for what you said is about juggling lots of ideas, and a lot of people in your position have that challenge of like, well, I've got so many ideas in my head, and
Right.
which ones do I pursue? But it's been remarkable to see how focused you've remained. Obviously, the iterations and it's evolved a lot over the years.
Yeah.
But it's been remarkable how your kind of vision and what you're doing, the value you're creating there around reading and writing has stayed the same. So I think that's a really good lesson for all of us. Tell me a little bit about, because you've been through quite a big evolution over, more than a decade now with your
Yeah.
product. How much of that has been about, value through design versus discovery, through discovering what works, and how much of it has been, this is what I want to create, and this is what I want to put out there, and, there we go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? It comes back to even those original ideas. If you do have lots of ideas, it's very well understood now that the best thing you can do is validate or invalidate those ideas as quickly as possible through whatever tests you can do. I guess I wasn't aware of that at the time. I had a mission, I had a purpose. I wasn't trying to validate this as $1 billion. I let the universe validate it for me, because, as I say, it was the decision that just triggered. But once you're in business, once you've convinced some people to join you in business, as I had my team, um, survival becomes the necessity. Um, and yeah, you iterate. I kind of think of it as uh, so if every business is unique. We got a £5,000 loan from HSBC, right? This is back before, in 2012, you were just starting to see accelerators and a sort of an interest in the sort of the media of businesses. But it wasn't common knowledge that you could have a startup business and like raise angel capital and then go to a venture capitalist. Like that narrative didn't exist in my head, and it didn't seem as broadly understood anyway. So we went to the bank for a bank loan, and we got very lucky. The bank manager that we met had young children, and kind of liked the cut of our jib and said, "Yeah, here you go. Here's £5,000." So we spent that on an agency to create us our prototype website, and then I started going out and pitching my very static, very low proof point business concept at competitions and awards. So that was the first phase of sort of shaping what we were doing, because I pitched it so often and to so many people, whether it was individual angels that I was potentially raising money from, or on, pitch events, which were all the rage when we were starting up in 2012. I went to so many of these things. And you get audience reaction, kind of like a stand-up comic working on jokes. You're waiting for okay, well, they seem interested in that bit, so maybe that's where the business is going. But that's just about proving enough to sort of get that early proper finance, really. The first angel investment that enables what you're doing. Certainly our journey was. And then you're into a whole new phase. So once we got accepted onto Wyra, which was a Telefonica's startup academy, and that led to £40,000, which enabled 3 of the team members to leave our jobs and start working on the business. A technology business is the hardest business, really, because you're saying that you're going to sell something that you're building in technology that's, I mean, I guess if you think about like a house costs £200,000 in materials to start to assemble, and then you got to get the staff and the crew, the team, the construction, like and an app or a website, it's got man hours attached to it. Like, yeah, there were these tools that were sort of reducing the cost, but it was still it's a big thing to make a technology product. And it's not £40,000 to make a product that someone's willing to spend money for out of technology. Like, unless you're investing a lot of your own time for free and you're a developer, it's very tough to make anything that's commercially viable. So we realized that we were going to have to go through several phases to even get to the product to try or fail with what we were doing. We made a free app and put it out there. And we thought, well, if we're not going to be able to monetize it, but maybe we can show that we make something solid and it gets some attraction, gets some attention. And we've got this bigger narrative around what we're actually going to build, and we'll be able to show the next round of investors, okay, well, look, we've made this thing. It's got some users that like it. We know we want to build this because we think at this point the house will have a roof, and so people might want to actually like pay us money to come into this house. Do you think you'll back us the next round? And that that app went out and it did get some traction. We got best in the list of best apps in the Guardian, and Apple featured it, and it made no money, but it was enough for my confidence to pitch it, and the team's confidence to stay attached to the company. And so much, I talked about this a lot at the beginning of the business. So much of business is momentum. It's kind of knowing why you're doing it, what you're doing, and then having the self-belief that you've created enough of a narrative to pull you through the next round of persuasion of this is a thing. This should be a thing. And then convincing enough people. So then the next round was 150,000 SEIS round. And that went like that. That was lightning how quickly that went. And we had a product that we still wasn't our house. I guess we had a roof on it, but we still didn't have any windows or doors or anything. Like, this was still not something you could realistically charge someone. Maybe a really, really dodgy Airbnb, but like, no one was going to give us money for this thing. And so they didn't. Whenever we made it free, we'd get a huge rush of downloads. I think we had like 40,000 downloads in a day, and we were like, wow. And then we looked and I was like, oh yeah, that was the day we made it free. And again, oh, that was the day we made it free. Couldn't make any money at all from the apps. But at that time, we convinced some of the people that had given us money to give us a bit more money, because we were like, we're so close now, and look, we're getting a lot more traction. There's a lot of downloads of this thing. We're not monetizing it yet, but there's something happening. Anyway, if I do it this way, Joe will be here for 24 hours. So I'll just skip to the next part. Then you start to get to customer validation, where you are actually starting to get customers spending. And we pivoted around like crazy. You don't get to this far into a business without doing a fair number of pivots unless you're very, very successful. But fundamentally, we learned that apps were very hard to monetize. Probably at the point in which apps became a bit easier to monetize, we learned that and got out of the apps business. Then we learned that schools were very slow to pay and very hard to sell to, so we got out of that business. And then we got back. We finally had a house, which was a beautiful house, the dream house, the one that I'd been thinking of, which was this product that had been in my head from day one. But better because I'd got to work on it with an incredible team of very talented designers and developers and product managers, and we had the thing. But then we had to go out and sell it. And that's where you really, really come up against the constant trying and testing. And I guess, depressingly, Joe, what I learned is that in the market that we operate in, at the level that we operate, my banging the drum for childhood creativity wasn't the business. The business was, we're going to help your kids' education. They're going to get better at reading and writing. And the how doesn't really matter. So all our ads that talked about creativity, the thing that had got me into the business, were less effective than
Yeah. So
we're
that's the
gonna.
killer insight. It's how do you present this idea?
How do I now present this
Drive
idea to get people?
sales.
And people love it. You read the reviews. Very proud of our trust pilots and all the other places that people can leave reviews, because you have parents talking about how this child is so engaged with their own ideas and it's their creativity at the fore. And now they're into reading and writing. So they still they understand once they're into it why it works, and it is working because it's talking to the child, their children on that level. But yeah, that's not how you sell it. And as a result, you also do end up having to be realistic about the product, and you rearrange the onboarding. So it's not straight away draw yourself as a night zookeeper. It's straight away into a bit more educational content and
Yeah,
getting the
people want
kids
to
into
know
that
where they're
journey.
going, what they're going to get, don't they? And it's
They do, and if you're aligning and you're marketing something in a certain way, it has to align with the product that you're building and you're offering. So, you've got to work out where that emphasis is and why you're doing everything you're doing. Still, as long as it can still achieve that same result, that same mission, you're still having that positive impact, then the other stuff's less important.
I think it's a great lesson that you're sharing there, because I always say to people, like, it's your enthusiasm, it's your passion, it's your why you're here, what's your mission on earth to do. That's the thing that drives your business. It gets people engaged, gets investors engaged, your early adopters and all that thing. But then you get to a point where you just need to make hard-nosed decisions based on data around
Right,
marketing and selling. And that's just the reality, isn't it? Because, we have to find what's the variant on your vision that works.
right,
And
right.
you've demonstrated that. Just take us back a couple of steps there, Josh, for people who are in the earlier stages of pitching for the first time for
Sure.
investment. What kind of advice would you pass on now to people at that stage? What do you wish you'd known then that you could pass on now?
Um, well, get to the point that you're testing the marketing as soon as possible. That's something I guess it's sort of more understood again these days. I say that maybe it's just that we understood it very late, but you really can spend too long in the product. You really can,
Right.
and blame the product for your lack of viral success. And I think it is valid. Like, your product has to be right, but it takes an incredibly special product to go from 0 to 1 million. And also a certain market, a certain use case. Like, if you're making a travel app that helps 40 million people who live in a city get from A to B really quickly, that's going to go viral really easily, and it's free. That's going to go, oh, you got this, or you got it. If you're making a product that helps a kid with with their writing skills, which initially it wasn't reading, writing, it was just writing. Um, you know, and it's paid, and it's sitting in addition to school in a culture where most parents expect the school to handle reading and writing as part of their kids' education and don't, need to augment that with anything private. Um, you're not going to be growing very virally. So yeah, just being cognizant, and so you have to market it, you have to test it, you have to start making people aware of it, because there are people out there that want your service. Then you have to make sure that they're encountering it at enough level. So move faster than we did to just get your thing, even if it's the house without windows, into people's hands.
That's great. And just thinking about, because I know you have expanded outside the UK, and that's been quite important for you. So what would you say for those who are thinking about expanding internationally? What do you wish you kind of known at the start that you can pass on in that regard?
I mean, I think that is the delight of doing business these days with digital businesses. You've got something that can be sold anywhere. Can be sold anywhere. They just need to know about it. And you've got tools like, Google and the Meta platforms and TikTok and Pinterest. Like, you've got these huge global social networks that are everywhere, and they've built it. Like, they've built the infrastructure for you to get your digital thing in front of someone anywhere in the world. Um, and yeah, different markets will resonate with what you're doing. That the algorithms lead it. If you're set up to market in those countries, then you can see where it's working. And if you're not set up to market in those countries, then you're not going to be learning that actually the culture there, the financial position of your target audience there, the financial fortunes of that market at that point in time. There's so many factors that influence whether a consumer will spend. And yeah, you've got cultural appreciation. You've got to have a certain amount of understanding that the marketing messages and the product that you're creating is going to resonate. But the audience will also tell you, and they'll tell you for not a lot of money. You'll start to get early signals as to whether or not this is something that you should double down on or triple down on or 100x down on.
And often we think about, the different contexts of different markets and think, well, that's a lot of extra consideration, other things we need to learn. But of course, on the flip side, it presents opportunities for bigger markets, like the US,
Right.
where actually they are more inclined, I imagine, to pay for your kind of services. So there is those upsides as well that
Yeah. Well, that's
can
the
be
interesting
solved.
thing, isn't it? Because it is such a bigger market. So I don't know. I still don't really know if the inclination in the US is greater than the inclination here in the UK to augment state level education. I know it is in Asia. It's very well established across Asia that parents will invest over and above everything they've got into their kids' education. We don't quite have that same attitude in the UK, and I don't know what level it is in the US, but certainly there's enough people in the US, which is such a bigger market, who are interested in investing in their kids' education, that immediately it became our most important market upon launching. And that's true for our industry. It might be true in other industries as well.
Hmm. And tell us though, so moving forward a little bit in time, you said business is about momentum, and I think that's definitely true. So tell us about, once we get to a level with our business where actually we are seeing quite a big spike in sales and some good sustained growth, how should people prepare their business for the next phase?
So we had a crazy spike of growth around the pandemic. As you can imagine, we suddenly had billions of children stuck at home globally, with parents going, "What do we do with these kids?" So we suddenly had a complete shift in market conditions, unnatural shift in market conditions. So we had to move very fast and make some big calls on that journey. We had some good people in the company that thankfully made some good decisions. So we invested in a good CRM program. So we got some good data. We invested in SEO. So we took outsized gains and invested them in long-term CAC reducing initiatives like SEO that ultimately meant that we didn't overextend ourselves. And when those very strange market conditions came to a pretty abrupt end, unlike, very sadly, a number of businesses in our industry and in other industries that had serious momentum and ended up maybe even dying, we had done enough with that during that period to build the engine for both scalable growth and replaced some of the marketing channels that had been working during the pandemic with more CAC efficient marketing channels that meant that we could continue to operate not at the level that we were, but at a sustainable level, and then very quickly get back into growth.
So something really important there about, when you've got the capital, like invest it really wisely and don't assume it's going to carry on forever. You need to start thinking about the next phase straight away.
I think so, and also be very careful about raising money during that time, because you're going to create a rod for your own back, because you'll be building models that are very exciting models for your business growth. And yeah, you'll then find that these levers that you've been pulling are not delivering the returns, and you've taken a whole bunch of capital and you're going to need to deploy it to grow your business, and it's going to be at a totally different unit economic ratio, and that can lead to serious trouble in terms of further financing and valuations.
Okay, Josh. So final question. So you've been a founder running your business for 12 years now. How do you sustain your enthusiasm and focus as a now long-term?
Focus is an interesting word with me. I've remained quite focused in this conversation, but if I run back through all of the different things that Night Zookeeper has attempted to do over the years, you will see that focus has been a bit of an issue. But I think that's it. Actually, I think that's at the root cause of why I've been able to maintain my enthusiasm. And I think it's because, it's a little bit of Del Boy this time next year, Rodney, because there's always a scheme, there's always an idea, there's always some way that you can grow your business. And I don't like to give in. I like to think that I can solve this riddle and crack it. I won't lie, I got a bit deflated when Roblox and Minecraft just knocked the ball out of the park on a similar theme, done differently. But again, that also then seen the right way, that's an additional motivation, and actually my solution is still highly relevant because it's so different to what they're doing. And I think this comes down to general starting up advice about passion that you mentioned. So having a mission, having a purpose that isn't just making money, being super rich from this endeavor. I think, the stat is that if you survive, if your business lasts 10 years, then, well, if your business has been going for any amount of time, then you're 1 in 10, your business is going to die. But if you can make it past the 10-year mark, over 50% of businesses are fine. Like, they're established now. They're not going anywhere. And now you've got a business that you can run as efficiently as possible. Maybe you're going to be able to make some decent profits. Maybe you're going to be able to keep growing. But you've got a business. You've got a value creating entity in society for you, for your family, for your employees and their families. You've created something in the world. So survival is key. And motivation and enthusiasm is the key to get to that point. But always believing in the next pivot. And this comes back to the momentum and storytelling. And it's because if you've got it, the most darkest times in the business is when I stopped thinking stopped having a narrative in my head as to how we would get to that mountain top. Like what actually one of the hardest times was post pandemic when the growth stopped and then it felt like, oh, I don't know how to sell this anymore because I've kind of built the house, you know, it's got all the nice windows. It's what I pictured. Here it is. And it's there and it's wonderful, but it's not um it's not exciting anymore because you're not where's the next thing? Where's the extension? Like what's the next plan? Are you going to build a village in a town? Um so I needed that again. I needed that next flag on the horizon to chase after. And that's where you know your main job, I guess, as the founder, as the CEO, is to be the guy that doesn't really stop believing ever and stays ridiculously optimistic and knows that as long as they've got a path, they can see a path to growth, that they can bring everyone with them who is involved in the company to try and achieve it. And it doesn't have to be, crazy idea number 52. It can be, this ad is just before. That's what's crazy now. Like this, we've just 2 weeks ago had a breakthrough in our advertising creative that if it's true, and it's still too early days in the data, but if it's true, it fundamentally changes the business because it could mean that we can acquire customers so much cheaper than we have been. And if we're able to scale that advertising and that creative, all new possibilities, for where you could further invest and, let's do a TV ad, like suddenly like, oh, we could start expanding in this area or this area, this area. So I guess, keeping that optimistic head on your shoulders, keeping your focus on the mission, as long as it's something you truly do believe in, having the right people around you who are going to encourage that mission and help make it viable, and yeah, and then it's easy. Then it's easy.
You say it's easy. It's not easy, but you do make it sound easy the way you definitely convinced me, Josh. Thank you. Like your energy and your enthusiasm, you definitely, piqued my interest like all those years ago. And it's great to see how, because you have endlessly experimented over this time. And I think that's really inspiring. I think it is the secret to how you've been able to keep going for so long with such
Yeah,
a strong vision about what you want to deliver to the world,
yeah.
but not being afraid to think of completely new ways to deliver it. It's really remarkable. I love your message about ultimately it's down to, as someone who's a marketer myself, how important the marketing plays a role and put
It's
a
huge.
focus on that early, I think is a great
Yeah,
example to
yeah.
people. And I also love what you just said about I'm always believing in the next pivot. I think I'm going to get that printed on t-shirts because
Always believe
a
in the next
mantra
pivot.
that we can all
Yeah,
say that the next
absolutely.
pivot is going to
Yeah,
be the one. And I
that'd be
think
the
you
one.
just need to have that belief is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
really, really important.
Be
So
that be that confident in your own ideas that eventually it will win out.
well,
Um,
that is what
yeah.
keeps that's what helps you survive, isn't it?
Actually, my co-founder Paul, so my CTO has we use Discord rather than Slack, and Discord is used by gamers, so it's got sort of some fun things. But he's got a little soundboard for when different people join meetings. He can play a little sound bite of the person that's joined the meeting. And my co-founder Paul, whenever he joins it, he plays, "I've got a great idea." It's like, it's wonderful. Like we're all, and I'm the same. I probably say it's a brilliant idea. I've got a brilliant idea. But like you've got to believe in your ideas because that's ultimately what we're doing here. When you're starting to create something, it's about coming up with the thing and believing in it and selling it. And yeah, you have to validate it. You can't run too far an idea without validating it. But yeah, believe in it, and then you can keep going.
That's a great way to end this. Is
Sure.
there anything you'd like to tell people about how they can find out more about Night Zookeeper or anything, new that's coming up that you
Course,
know
of
about?
course. I'll give them the full pitch. So yeah, we've just launched a tablet app version of Night Zookeeper. I say tablet app, it's just iPad at the moment, but yeah, an iPad version of Night Zookeeper. It's nightzookeeper.com. If you don't have an iPad, then we're accessible on all devices through browsers, web browsers. Um, fantastic program for 6 to 12-year-olds to reawaken their creative spirit or get them passionate about reading and writing. Essentially, I'm a big kid. I made this for the young me. I would have loved this, and we've got hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of kids that have have really benefited from Night Zookeeper. So, if you have any kids in your life, your own, or you're an uncle or an auntie or a grandparent, please, yeah, check out Night Zookeeper.
Fantastic. And
You weren't expecting the full advert there, Joe. I went full,
no, no, you
prime
should.
time.
So you absolutely
I'm
should.
absolutely that's my final founder lesson. Just pitch it hard every time you get the chance. Like, don't let anyone wiggle away without signing up.
And as you said in those early days, the more you did it, the better you got at doing it. So it's
Yeah, I think I felt like I was a bit rusty, to be honest. But yeah, no, early early days. Yeah, that elevator pitch is crucial.
Well, thank you so much, Josh, for your time today.
Thanks.
Invaluable wisdom and experience you passed on there. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
There's
having me,
more
Joe.
interviews like this on the Founders Reboot YouTube channel. There's more free advice and support on foundersreboot.com. But otherwise, thanks again, Josh. Great to have you here today. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you.